Welcome back! My name is Baller Scuba. This is Video Games Over Time. We are still in 1982. And today, we're going to talk about Blade Runner. The story of Blade Runner takes us to Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick is an American science fiction writer. Dick first was able to get published in 1955 with his novel Solar Lottery. After that publication, Dick would be prolific, publishing over 30 novels between 1955 and 1982. One of his most famous novels was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was released in 1968. Dick has stated that one of his big inspirations for the novel was L. Ron Hubbard, an American fantasy and science fiction writer who founded the Church of Scientology. In particular, Dick was inspired by Hubbard's 1940 novella, Fear. Fear is told in a way that obscures reality itself. Dick was inspired by this concept to create a surrealistic feeling in some of his characters. The novel also takes inspiration from noir novels in how it is told. Noir novels are often gritty, told from the perspective of a bitter detective who must solve a case in a corrupt and crime-ridden world. Dick has also cited Theodore Sturgeon's More Than Human as an inspiration. More Than Human is a surrealistic story that explores the concept of several characters acting with a single consciousness. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep takes place in San Francisco in a dystopian future. The story follows Rick Deckard, a bounty hunter, who is tasked with finding and killing 6 androids who have escaped from Mars and have reached Earth. The novel itself was received well when it was released. It was nominated for a Nebula Award in 1968, and the critics at the time considered it the best of Philip K. Dick's works. With a popular science fiction novel out there, it was only a matter of time before Hollywood sought to make a movie adaptation. Herb Jaffe, an American producer, tried to get the film made in the early 1970s, but Dick was not happy with the script. Hampton Fancher, an American actor, wrote an adaptation of the novel in 1977. British film producer Michael Deeley became interested in the script and convinced Ridley Scott to direct. Deeley was best known for his work on The Italian Job and The Deer Hunter. We have talked about Ridley Scott before. Scott was the director of Alien, which we talked about in its own video. Ridley Scott had previously turned down the project, but was growing tired of the production on another film, so agreed to take on the project in February 1980. With Scott's involvement, Filmways, a production company, agreed to increase their financing from $13 million to $15 million. However, Scott felt that Fancher's script focused too much on environmental issues and not enough on issues on humanity and religion. So, Ridley Scott hired David Peoples to rewrite the script. David Peoples had written The Day After Trinity, a documentary film about scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer. Hampton Fancher, upset at the rewrite, left the project as a result. Fancher would return for a few rewrites, however. The name Blade Runner originally came from a treatment of Alan E. Nourse's 1974 novel The Blade Runner by William S. Burroughs, named Blade Runner, a movie, which was written in 1979. Ridley Scott liked the name, and Deeley bought the rights to it. Right before principal photography started, Filmways, who had contributed $2.5 million at this point, decided to withdraw their financial backing of the project. Deeley, in 10 days, was able to get $21.5 million in funding from 3 different sources. Those were the Ladd Company through Warner Brothers, Hong Kong-based producer Sir Run Run Shaw, and Tandem Productions. Philip K. Dick was originally unaware of the project. However, Dick was sent a copy of an early script by Fancher and disliked it, publishing his concerns publicly. Dick was, however, more pleased with the rewrite that Peoples had written. Casting for the film proved to be difficult. The original screenwriter, Hampton Fancher, said he had envisioned veteran actor Robert Mitchum as Deckard, even writing the dialogue with him in mind. Ridley Scott, however, preferred Dustin Hoffman for the role. After months of negotiations with the actor, however, Hoffman left the project over creative differences. Other actors considered were Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Peter Falk, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, and Burt Reynolds. Ultimately, the role went to Harrison Ford. Ford, coming off the Star Wars and Indiana Jones films, wanted a role with more depth to it. Ford would be complemented with veteran Dutch actor Rutger Hauer. The rest of the cast would be filled with lesser-known actors. Principal photography started on March 9th, 1981. The film would be difficult to shoot, with Scott and Ford having many differences of opinions. One of the biggest differences was the use of voiceovers. Ford felt the film was better without them and hated his time recording them. The sets of the film would depict a dystopian future. Designed by production designer Lawrence G. Paul and art director David Snyder, the film's artistic mood drew inspiration from several sources, including the 1927 film Metropolis, Edward Hopper's painting Nighthawk, Italian futurist architect Antonio Sant'Elia, and French science fiction comics magazine Metal Hurlant. The original concepts were sketched by Sid Mead, who had worked on Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Douglas Trumbull and Richard Yuricich were in charge of the special effects of the film. Both men had worked on Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Mark Stetson would design the models. Though contentious, principal photography would conclude after 4 months. Both Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford have publicly stated that the filming for Blade Runner was difficult, but they were ultimately happy with the result. The film's soundtrack was composed by Greek composer Vangelis. Vangelis had previously done the soundtrack for the 1981 film Chariots of Fire. The original version of the film, named the original work print version, was shown to test audiences. Those test audiences reacted negatively, so changes were made. A second version of the film was shown for a sneak preview in San Diego. 3 scenes from this version were cut for the final version that was released in theaters. In theaters, 2 different versions of the film were shown, a so-called domestic cut and an international cut. The international cut had more graphic violence that was deemed unsuitable for US audiences. Blade Runner was released in 1,290 theaters on June 25, 1982. Its final budget would be $30 million, over $84 million in 2021. Philip K. Dick, the original author of the story, would not make it to the premiere. Philip K. Dick died of a stroke 4 months earlier, on March 2, 1982. He was 53 years old. Blade Runner is dedicated to him. On its opening weekend, Blade Runner would only make $6.1 million. It was not initially successful. This is partially attributed to its release date, which was chosen by producer Alan Ladd Jr., who felt that the date was lucky due to previous successful films being released on that date. However, with other science fiction and fantasy films still in theaters, including Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Conan the Barbarian, the film's success was negatively impacted by the timing of its release. Initially, the critics had mixed opinions on the film. Much of the criticism landed on the film's plot, while the special effects were seen as a highlight. Other critics were fans of the plot and felt that both the audience and the other critics misunderstood the film. By the end of its initial run, the film would gross $41.5 million, over $116 million in 2021. While profitable, the film is not seen as successful. As time has gone on, however, the film has attained a cult status. Many critics now consider the film a masterpiece and hold it among the greatest films of all time. The film would prove to be very influential, and its impact would be nearly immediate. Blade Runner helped bring dystopian science fiction to the mainstream. The visual style that the film shows would be copied and expanded upon for years, and the dialogue and music from the film would be sampled more than any other film in the 20th century. The film would have an impact across industries, with the creators of film, television, comic books, anime, music, video games, and even cars, citing Blade Runner as an influence. If you have not seen the film, its cultural impact alone makes the film worth your time, and I highly recommend watching it. That is the backstory to Blade Runner. That means that it is time to talk about the plot of the film. Because of the different versions that we have mentioned, plus 3 additional versions of the film that were released years later, it is difficult to give a single plot summary of the film. But that is what we will attempt. If you have not seen the film and do not want its plot spoiled, now would be the time to stop watching. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. For those that have stayed, let's talk about the plot of Blade Runner. The film opens in 2019 Los Angeles, where Deckard is being detained by Officer Gaff and his supervisor. Deckard, a former police officer, currently works as a Blade Runner, a bounty hunter who searches for and destroys replicants, bioengineered humanoids. The two watch a video of an interrogation that is designed to determine whether someone is a replicant or a human. The replicant, however, kills the interrogator after the second question. Gaff wants Deckard to kill this replicant, named Leon, as well as 3 others. Deckard then meets the CEO of the company that creates the replicants. The CEO wants Deckard to administer the test on his assistant, Rachel. After a lengthy interrogation, Deckard believes that Rachel is a replicant that believes she is human. The CEO is disappointed he could not fool the test, but explains that Rachel is an experiment who has been given false memories. Deckard begins his investigation at Leon's apartment. Rachel goes to Deckard's apartment, still trying to prove that she is human. But Deckard proves the memories wrong, and Rachel leaves crying. Deckard continues his investigation at a strip club, where he finds one of the replicants. Deckard kills her. Deckard then receives orders to kill Rachel, who has disappeared. He finds Rachel, but Leon stops him before he can kill her. Leon then tries to kill Deckard, but Rachel shoots Leon to save Deckard. Rachel and Deckard go back to Deckard's apartment, where Deckard promises not to hunt down Rachel. The other fugitive replicants start discussing their lifespans at an apartment. They are able to get into the CEO's apartment and they demand a longer lifespan. The CEO tells them it is impossible. One of the replicants then kills the CEO. Deckard is later told that one of the replicants died while they were trying to escape. Deckard then goes to the replicant's apartment, where he is ambushed. He is able to turn things around and kill the replicant that is there. The replicant that killed the CEO returns to the apartment and Deckard starts chasing him. Deckard is saved by the replicant, who then talks about his memories before he dies. Deckard then returns to his apartment where Rachel is waiting for him. The film closes with Deckard and Rachel leaving the apartment together. With the film's plot now told, let's take a brief glimpse into the future. We will be talking about Blade Runner again. Its influence and impact would continue to be seen for years. The cast and crew of the film would continue to work in the industry, and we will be hearing most of these names again. As for Philip K. Dick, who wrote the original story, even though he passed in 1982, the novels that he wrote would continue to have an impact. Don't be surprised to hear about Philip K. Dick again. That will do it for the story of Blade Runner for now. My name is Baller Scuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video when we double our numbers.